Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Driver's Lounge. In today's episode, we're going to be catching up with two representatives from VLR, Miranda Cromp and Colin Warren, to figure out why they think the VLR is the best chassis in 206 racing at the moment. In my mini-series, where I intend to talk to 5 representatives of the most dominant karting chassis in 206 racing. If you guys are excited for this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. And without further ado, welcome to today's episode. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Driver's Lounge. On today's episode, we have Miranda and Colin from VLR and RLV here with us today. Thank you guys so much for coming on. If you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, my name is Miranda. I'm the general manager of RLV and been with the company for 10 years now. Looking to buy it out next year is the plan, so that's exciting and big changes ahead. Going to keep everything basically how it is, but exciting to take on that new role and all the challenges it's going to face. But yeah, the VLR has been a good addition to our company. It was, the owner's dreams they've been in the industry for 50 years and they always wanted to have a go-kart, and about 10 years ago, they kind of sat down with the best of the best and put their brains all together. And then now we're blessed to have the best of the best drivers, in my opinion, and Colin Warren's one of them, and his success speaks for itself. So that's a little bit about myself.
I'm Colin Warren. I've been racing for 23 years now. I drive for RLV, driving the VLR chassis, also TS Racing. Yeah.
So you guys are both located on 2 separate sides of the country. Kind of tell me a little bit about that. Has that slowed you guys down at all, or does it just allow to have representation on both sides of the country?
I believe, I'm on the West Coast out at RLV. We're in California. And I think the good thing about our chassis is that we have every single person that's a dealer of RLVs, which there's over like 250 dealers, can purchase VLR carts from us. And that kind of allows us to basically have the whole United States to sell parts to through our dealer network. And I think that kind of puts us above the rest of having that advantage. But it also helps kind of spread out having drivers all over the country. We're very selective on who we pick to join our team because we have a reputation that I tried to uphold. There's some other drivers that probably could join our team, but I don't always feel like they're the best fit because of their driving style. And I feel like I hold everybody to a pretty high standard if you're going to represent our company, because the owners have done such a good job the last 50 years of representing that, and I'm just trying to do the same thing. And Colin's, if you know him, he's a class act on and off the track. It's kind of hard to hate him, even when probably you want to most of the time, because I would hate driving against him too. But it's nice having TS on the East Coast, and we're excited to add Comet in the Midwest. That's been a big addition. They just are going to take on our brand, and they've been a big distributor of ours for our RLV parts, but I'm excited to get them on board with the VLR and see what they can do in the Midwest with it. So
That's super cool. So I know you kind of mentioned briefly a little bit about the backstory of the VLR chassis itself, but Colin, if you want to kind of go into depth about like how you ended up on the VLR. I know you've been on with this, on the VLR with RLV for the past couple years. Kind of talk us through what made you want to go to VLR and how you like the chassis.
So it started out, I was driving for TS Racing, and they were kind of exploring different chassis, and they got a hold of probably Art or Rod, one of the two.
yeah.
And worked out a deal, and then we started driving on the chassis, and I loved it.
And how long has that been that you've been with them?
Gosh, it's been like 8 years now.
Probably.
Wow.
Probably close to 8 years. It's been a while.
Because about 10 years. It's been about 10 years that
Well, there's
we
been
started.
8 grants.
Yeah, 8 grants. Yeah.
That's a good
So-
way to measure it.
Yeah, that's a long time. So you kind of mentioned bringing on Comet to be a dealer as well. So what is kind of the availability of parts? Do you guys ever have any sort of shortages, or Like, where are you guys manufacturing these parts? Is it here in the U.S.? Has there ever been an issue with having a surplus of parts available?
Yeah, our chassis is manufactured in Italy by a company called EKS. They started out in the parts business, making parts for many manufacturers and different carts, and they decided to bring in their own cart line, and then we approached them with making our design, and they've been very helpful in giving their own input and their history, and kind of together we've come up with the VLR. We have our cart's a 28 millimeter, which most everybody else is 30 and 32. And I think for four cycle and low horsepower, it gives us an advantage. Allows the chassis to flex, and we're still coming up with different prototypes, still trying to throw things at it to try to see if we can get it, even more. And Collins helps us a lot with that, and a lot of different input. But as far as availability, during COVID, I think everyone
Yeah.
had a tough go there. We did the best we could. We stocked as much as we could. You just had to up your orders and hope for the best during those years. But it seems like we're on the right side of it, and we get containers of carts at a time, and try to disperse them across the United States. TS usually sits on a couple, and we have some at Comet, and Arizona has a big following of VLRs down there with Innovative. We have a new addition. Nevada Kart Sports moved to Texas, so we're excited to get them down there and compete down there at the TSRS. Did pretty good this year. But yeah, we have a couple dealers up in Washington now, and just trying to keep it spread out, so that everybody is, within at least a state away to have some
Right.
support and at least have some teammates out there. But the country, it's big, so it's hard to go after everything, but I think we do a pretty good job of having availability. And our dealers, like I said, anybody can stock it, or any of our dealers can drop ship VLR parts. So anybody on our distributor map, if you called them up and said, hey, I need you to ship me a steering shaft, they could do that and drop ship it directly to your door. So
Gotcha. So I guess, Colin, since you have the most time driving it, how do you feel like the tunability of the chassis is? Do you feel like on a normal race weekend, are you guys making a lot of changes, or are you kind of staying on a normal base setup and making small changes here or there?
Um, Honestly, it's normally very small changes. We show up with a very kind of our baseline, maybe in and out a tiny bit with the rear width, and caster. That's about it. Maybe move a weight forward and back. That's really not much.
Pretty minimal.
It's very, yeah, and it doesn't take a lot because the cart reacts very well to very like small minor changes, and you can really feel those changes. So it really helps you kind of get in that really fine-tuned window.
I know that you guys run a lot of the 40 mil axle stuff. What kind of made you want to go to the 40 mil axle over a 50 mil, as a lot of the stuff more currently you normally see a lot more 50 mil stuff? How do you think that gives you an advantage over the bigger 50 mil axle?
Um, Personally, every time I see a 50 mil axle, they work like pretty decent, like in cold weather. But the moment that it gets like really hot out and kind of like grippy track in general, they tend to start struggling a bit more. It's hard to get them to free up. So the 40 mil axle, it keeps very consistent, cold weather, warm weather, all the way through a run. It's doesn't really change much.
Gotcha. I
and we
know
did.
that.
Oh,
Go
go
ahead. I'm
ahead.
sorry.
We did just add to our line. It's a 28 millimeter chassis, but we added for heavier or masters or tall, like 6'3" drivers. We have a frame now that's 28, and it has a 30 millimeter front axle tube. So it's kind of a mixture to give it more front end bite, and we've seen that be successful with the heavier, like master drivers, people with a lot of weight on their chassis, because a lot of people they were saying it wasn't as responsive in the front, like front end grip with like a taller, like we have a couple 6'3", 6'4" drivers.
We have a lot of tall drivers.
We have a lot of tall drivers. I'm like, why can't I find like a short, a short guy?
Yeah.
Easy, but it's been a lot more successful adding that to our line.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was honestly my next question was how does that 28 mil tubing respond with the heavier drivers? But it sounds like that you guys have kind of found a cure for that problem.
Yeah, and the S bar design, I think it differentiates us to have that and allows the, that rear tire to get off the ground and a little more flex to it. So we play around with that, different tubings, and still trying to find, always make the chassis better.
Yeah.
But as of right now, we've been excited with what we have.
Right. So obviously you guys got some great drivers on your hands, and you've mentioned briefly about continuing to test new things. How has having drivers like Colin and like Dylan, that's the guys that I race personally, but I assume that you guys have some pretty stout drivers there on the West Coast as well. How has having those great drivers allowed for you guys to continue to test new things, make changes to the chassis? Are you guys coming out with new designs every year, or is it more of just testing things here and there, and if you like something, it sticks, or maybe it doesn't stick? How has that process kind of been for you guys?
I think, we've a couple things have stuck. Colin plays around a little bit with has played with spindles and different things like that, different rear hub, widths. We played around with a couple things like that. Colin kind of runs his own setup that he feels like works best for himself, and like Addison has, adopted it. Dylan's on it. So a lot of like this, like smaller, skinnier drivers are a lot more on Colin's like 28 millimeter setup. They play around with a little bit of the like front bar stuff.
It's mainly just front bar. We run a softer axle. That's about it. Like there's really not that many differences. You run a soft seat, soft axle, but we're small, so it doesn't overflex the cart.
Some of my taller drivers have to run a little bit different setup. So, it's helpful that we kind of have an array of drivers. I have a couple Masters drivers, and Jeff Shaw's coming back for 2025. We're excited about that, to have him back in the seat. Nick Sobiak, those type of drivers, we have an array. So it's helpful to get feedback from everybody, especially like when we go to Cup Carts. You learn a lot from that weekend, even though you're not ever testing that weekend. But, we kind of they all come back to me with feedback after the weekend. It's nice to see the same track, same conditions, and what everybody felt, and then we go back to the drawing board for 2025 and have a couple prototypes coming our way and see what we can come up with for the new season.
I would say, I know, Cameron, you asked like if we changed the chassis very much, and it doesn't really. In the past couple of years, we haven't changed it really at all, right?
No,
Gotcha.
We've tried a few little
just
things
the
here
new
and there,
axle.
but the 30 mil. That's the only thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was kind of my next question is there any changes coming for 2025? And you guys had stated that new chassis with the design for the heavier drivers. But as for the normal chassis that we see like Colin run, are there any differences at all for 2025?
For the start of 2025, no. There may be something in the middle that we, try to prepare for Grands with. We have a couple prototypes being made at the moment. We still have to test those, and if they work, got to get them into production. But for the start of 2025, they'll be the same. We also might look at Martin Custom Products brakes and do an upgrade with some new brakes systems. Colin loves our brakes currently, so he's not all the way excited about it. But I feel like, in the U.S., it'd be nice. A lot of the other teams are on that, and there's parts available here. So it'd be nice to have, that. If you're going to pull somebody from a different chassis that they're used to that brake, it's nice to have something that they're familiar with.
Right. So I guess we'll kind of use Cup Carts as an example because you guys were both there. But what would a weekend with VLR or RLV look like? I know it's kind of hard as, Colin normally runs with TS on the East Coast and you're on the West Coast. But if we use Cup Carts as an example, what does a weekend with your team normally look like?
That's a dangerous question. No, our number one thing is it's fun, but we're focused. It's like a focused fun. We all have each other's backs. I have team meetings. I get everybody together, and we're all in it together. We understand that there's got to be one winner at the end of the weekend, and that doesn't get lost on us. But at the same time, you got to work together at a place like that, especially to maintain, to get to the front. Like the days of Colin driving away from people and my life being easier are, far from, they're long over. And, all of our competition has really stepped up, and it's exciting. It's fun to watch. But for our team, we're a big family. I think we all have love for each other. And once you get into our group, everyone's sharing data. There's no secrets. I mean, Colin will give you his setup, and he understands you got to get on the track.
If anyone wants it, message me. I'll let you know. Tell you everything. Doesn't really matter to me.
But you know,
We need to just do a sheet. We need to do a whole setup sheet, just
we
like
can just do it.
put it
It's
out there.
Colin's success. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's everyone, there is no secrets. I've been a part of some other teams, you know, and seen some other things. It's like, you know, everything's a secret and everyone's against each other. You might be on the same chassis, but, you know, it's competitive. It's still competitive. It's everybody under our tent wants to win. But at the same time, it's a big fan. Like Addison got in a wreck and everyone was over there. I think there was like 7 people wrenching on her cart trying to get that
Yeah.
thing ready for the next heat. It was like cutting axles out and you know it was like a surgery room in there. But you know we all jumped in and got her ready for the next heat, and that's I think what our chassis and brand is about. And once you're a part of us and a part of the team, you know we're an open book. You can call us. We have dealers that are you know very familiar with the chassis. Everyone's super helpful. Colin's been very helpful to a lot of the new drivers, like Addison, having her on board this year. You know, he's got her set up with his setup basically with a couple of different changes, and it's been working really well for her at you know Newcastle and the Ohio area, and she's done very well. So we're excited to have her on the brand.
I think with so many different drivers too, like we have different setups. Like me being smaller, and you have the bigger drivers and stuff like that. So like whatever type of driver you are, heavy, tall, small, like we have a baseline that we could tell you, and we could give you setup tips. We could give, you know, basically let you know how to show up to a track, and your car will be fast.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
So, sorry.
we designed that chassis to like if you make a change, you feel it instantly. It's not like a couple other chassis, and you know sometimes you throw 5 things at it, and you're like what which direction am I going?
Yeah.
Is it the right one, the wrong one? The biggest feedback that I've heard from our cart is like you make a change and you feel it, whether it's bad or good. You know which direction you're going, and I think that's helpful. And when you buy a cart, you get a standard setup that we've created with everyone's input, kind of like an average driver, and it basically tells you how to set it up from the front of the chassis to the rear. And you know, we tell everybody go out on this and then make changes from there. And on a weekend, you know, some people might change one thing from that, maybe a couple if you know a really gripped up track or some you know rain extreme conditions or something like that. But we're excited that we finally have like a pretty good baseline.
So, what do you feel like makes the VLR stand out from all the other chassis on the market? Obviously, the 40 mil axle I think is a big selling point because it is so different. You see a lot of people running the 50 mil now, but if you could pick, you know, a couple things that make the VLR completely different from everybody else, what would be your main selling points on this is why you should choose the VLR?
You know, I think all these chassis now, honestly, you could put Colin Warren on every single one of these chassis and it's going to be successful. Everyone's product is really, really good. One of the biggest selling points of ours is the price point on parts, replacement parts. All these rollers now are about $4,000. But as far as parts, we're one of the cheapest in the industry but we still, you know, make sure that they're not cheap parts, you know, they're affordable, but not cheap. So that's been a big focus of ours, is to have that affordability and keep karting inexpensive because that's when it was the most, you know, the numbers were like 300 plus at a club race when everything was affordable. And that's been our goal is to keep everything affordable.
Gotcha. I mean, Colin, from a driving standpoint, like, what have you felt has been the best part about the VLR? Any differences from previous cars that you've driven? I know you've done a little bit of time on an OTK, but what makes the VLR so different and such a good chassis? Yeah, so I'm not sure what happened there. I cannot hear him, but hopefully in the recording it still has it. But what kind of?
I couldn't hear. Like I started here and then I couldn't hear anything.
Yeah, I'm praying that the recording still has this. But I'll kind of start to wrap it up for you guys. Let's talk about what the price point is for a new chassis. If somebody wanted to, pick one up for 2025, what would be the price point?
They're like $3,000, like $980. So about 4,000. Let's just say 4,000 for a roller out
Gotcha.
the door. You know, some of the dealers, you know, probably would work with you. It's not MAT pricing, but it gets a little competitive when you're trying to sell point. But that's the biggest point is when you go say, quote an axle, go quote a steering shaft, and then they see the price difference from what ours are, and compared to some other of our competitors, and a lot of times they come back and choose the VLR. So,
Gotcha.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry, my headset died, so I tried to plug it in and it messed up. What I was saying earlier was of how raceable the kart is. Like, you can make you can make maneuvers, you can go wide, you can do all these things. You don't lose time. It's very easy to race, very easy to drive. I think part of that comes from the chassis. You kind of have the dream setup of, like, you can have a kart that has a lot of grip, but it doesn't get tight. It's still free. So it allows you to drive harder when needed. You can drive easier. It gives you a lot of options to race. And I think that's why it's so good and so successful, like, up front.
Gotcha. So I guess my kind of last question for you is, what are you kind of doing differently, if anything at all? I know sometimes we see on other teams, other chassis, their front guys are on what we like to call a Frankenstein setup. It's not even the average Joe is not getting the same setup as their star driver. So if anything at all, are you doing anything different? Is Colin Warren's setup any different than what the normal person would receive?
It's the same exact frame, same exact chassis. He can give you a rundown of, I guess, what he does a little different.
Yeah. So all I do different is I run a softer axle. I run the Pigment T 1.8 axle, and then I run either a Tillet VTI or a VG seat, so just a soft seat. That's mainly it. And then, yeah. And it's the exact same chassis as everyone else. I don't think anyone is on really like a prototype chassis.
No.
Yeah. If anyone wanted to come up and buy the kart after the end of the weekend, it's fair game. Go for it.
I think that's what a lot of people want to hear. They want to. It's so much easier when you could just go buy the winning chassis. So, all right. Well, I mean, if you guys don't really have anything else to note, thank you guys so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And for any of the viewers, if you're looking to get onto a VLR chassis, it's proven successful between Colin and Dylan and a lot of drivers out there. So you can reach out to Miranda or TS Racing. It sounds like Comet is also going to come on board. Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming on. Do you guys have anything else you'd like to add?
No, just thank you for this. I think it's good for the sport, and I'm glad to see another girl in the limelight. So
Thank you for having us.
All right, you guys have a nice holiday.
Thanks, you too. Take care.
Thank you guys so much for watching today's episode. I've been having so much fun making these. If you guys are enjoying the episodes, please like, subscribe, and comment down below who you'd like to see next. Thank you guys again, and I'll see you in the next one.